All right. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Ball, and I'm a librarian in the Business and Economics Department at Los Angeles Public Library. Welcome to today's program, which is brought to you by the library and SCORE Los Angeles. Today's topic is startup success. We have two co-presenters who I'm very excited to have joining us today. I will be introducing them in just a few moments, but first I want to go over a few housekeeping items. First of all, as always, we are recording this presentation. And so this video will be available here on the library's YouTube channel. So relax, don't feel like you need to take notes. Don't worry if you miss any part of this or if you need to leave early, you can always come back here to YouTube and watch the video. Also, if you have any questions for our presenters, we would love to hear from you. And so what you will do is you're going to log into your YouTube account and you're going to type your question into the chat box. We will be holding off until the end of the presentation to address any of your questions. However, feel free to submit your questions at any time. We'll make note of them and we will hold them until the end. All right, with that said, I am very happy to introduce our two presenters, Andy Nieman and James Neelankavil. I do want to say both Andy and James are volunteer mentors with the Los Angeles chapter of SCORE. For those of you who are unfamiliar with SCORE, it's a national organization that provides free expert mentoring and educational resources to help entrepreneurs start and grow their business. And so Andy and James, they actually do the mentorship as partners, and they have helped a lot of folks with their startups. And I like to just tell you a little bit about each of them individually. I'm going to go ahead and start with Andy Nieman. Andy is, as I said, a volunteer SCORE mentor. He specializes in organizing startups, helping the newly formed entity into profitability, and creating the investments into retirement planning. Andy is a CPA, certified public accountant, that worked for a large international firm. He then went on to work in the family manufacturing business. And finally, he became a sole practitioner, and he added a degree in personal finance to aid his clients. As a mentor and with his partner, James, Andy has used his expertise in sales, marketing, accounting, cash flow, and manufacturing to help companies succeed. And our other presenter, James Neelankavil, he is a retired Robert E. Brockway Distinguished Professor of Marketing and International Business at the Zarb School of Business of Hofstra University. He has been a consultant to multinational companies for 30 years. And he also started a graduate consulting club that assists local area entrepreneurs and small businesses on a pro bono basis. Through his experience, he was able to understand the critical issues that face small business. And with his vast teaching and consulting experience, he is able to provide assistance to small business owners, startups, and entrepreneurs in the areas of strategic marketing and business planning. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Andy and James.
Hi, good afternoon. Before I begin, a caveat. I left my CPA practice 7 years ago, so if anyone's going to ask questions about rates, percentages, and brackets, you'll have to go on Google and figure it out, or I'll help you figure it out. I have no resemblance of remembering any of those numbers. And two good things happened today. You're going to have a great hour of intellectual conversation from James and I. And the second best thing is there'll be no more political ads on TV for a while. So with that said, this is the critical beginning, the starting up of the company. It takes time. It takes soul searching. You'll start, you'll stop, you'll start, you'll stop. And when you stop, you'll realize I can't go forward with this because I just don't have the capital, or I don't have the help that I need to get through this, or my market is too small. But James will explain it, and let's begin with the pre-start because it's really important.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Andy. We would assume that among the participants, there are some who have already started the business, or some who have really advanced in the business, and there are some who are just going to start. For those who have advanced or already started, you will see that either you can improve some of the things what we are trying to start with, or you can catch up with some of the strategic options we discuss. Having said that, if you're just starting, the best thing when you start is to have an idea. And this idea could come from various sources. Many come from your own expertise. And a good example of this will be tech companies who are real startups. They have worked for 5, 10, 15 years and using their technology expertise come up with an app or a new program or a new benefit for the customers. Or it could be something which you observe in your own life and realize, I can do something better than this, and therefore work on that. Or a third option we often have seen among our startups is where they want to improve something from what the existing system is. And this improvement could be a convenient factor. It is easier to use. It could be or cheaper to produce, so it is a lower cost, or is more flexible, or any of these could be a reason that you want to improve on that. So that's where the starting point of the idea is. Now, going on to the second part of this, it is once you have an idea, uh, we will have to do a preliminary assessment. In other words, when you have an idea or you know of a product or a service you want to start, you might think and say, where am I going to sell this? How big is the market? Who are the people who might tend to buy? How how much can I make out of this? Who are my competitors? What are their strengths and weakness? So that is the general assessment, and you don't have to conduct a market study for that. Just try to find out from secondary sources, newspapers, magazines, things like this idea, who's buying this product, these kind of products. What is their age? So we call that a target market. We want to define them. Will a child be interested in having a coffee shop next to them, or they are more interested in saying if there is an arcade next to that particular school or their household or their neighborhood? Then we come to make an idea of the size. When we mean size, how many units can I sell? What is the revenue what I can get of that? Because that dictates whether it is worth it for you to go into this market. Uh, for example, suppose you are starting out a coffee shop, regular American coffee. What you realize is that market is very big, but Starbucks and Alfred's and other coffee shop, Pete's coffee shops are all over the place, and they have an entrenched market. So if you want to come into that market, unless you are offering something very unique, very beneficial for the users, it is not going to survive. And that's what we want to look at when we say, who are our potential competitors? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Can we exploit their weaknesses and therefore come up in terms of a product which is better than what their service or a product is? So that will be the preliminary assessment. It's not a market test. It's simply doing some thinking about it before putting any money. Yes, Andy.
This this concept that James just went over is for a consultant or a man who manufactures mousetraps. I mean, it's you have to have the broad concept of this entire situation. Um, as James was talking, I remember the story back in 1950, I think. A man in France named Bic, B-I-C-H, saw a fountain. I saw a ballpoint pen in Paris or somewhere, and he bought it and he improved on it, and now the world is better because of the Bic pen. I mean, just think of what the how an idea and making it better can improve everything. And education improved because of the Big Pen. I mean, absolutely amazing. Which we have to talk. Eventually, we're going to start talking about um, high price and low price and volume but let's go on. I'm sorry, James. Continue.
No, no, that's a good example, and that's it's the nail on the head. That is improving something. Another one which comes to mind is in olden days, people when they use maple syrup or syrup for waffles and pancakes, they had to pour and it is to drip all over the place. Then they came up with that small spout onto the cap so that you can pour them very easily and very well. That's an improvement, and that changed quite a lot for the business and for the people who introduced that. So that's the kind of improvement we are talking. Now, among this assessment, besides looking at the target market, besides looking at the benefits what we can offer, besides looking at the competitors, we want to know what are the costs, because Andy will later on go on in terms of the importance of the cost, because we need to understand that when you produce, there is a manufacturing cost quite often, there is a raw material cost quite often, there is an overhead cost quite often. Whereas on the service industry, you might not be manufacturing, but you might need some very good computers, a very good internet program, a website, and a place where you can provide that service. So all these are costs associated. Now, in cost, one of the things what will you find is it can be used to be able to benefit a customer. Price is quite an attractive phenomenon in most marketing. If you can provide a service or a product at a slightly lesser price at the same uh, benefits and the same quality, people will flock at you in doing that. And a good example is the Walmarts and the Costco's of this world. They have captured quite a portion of the share of the market simply because they have been able to provide the same products or services at a much lower price. But of course, there is a downside to it. The neighborhood stores have suffered a lot. The small grocery stores have suffered. Some wine companies have suffered because Costco's wines are much cheaper than any small store can sell. So there is some downside to this. And the final analysis, before you start putting in money, think in terms of, can I make profits out of this? Is this going to be profitable? Might be not be in the 1 year or the second year, but it cannot go on where if 4 5 years you are not making any profits. That is not sustainable. Andy?
Yeah, this is really, really important. Is it a hobby or is it a real business? And if it's a hobby, you can continue on and have some side income and do what you want to do. Don't report it to the IRS. It's okay. But if you start reporting your losses as a hobby to the IRS, you have to show within a 5 year period, I think it's 2 years of profitability. And if not, then all of it is thrown out. You have to amend 5 years of tax returns. It's a nightmare. But if you're a business, you have to have a separate checking account. You have to have a name. You have to have business cards. You have to be organized. You have to be methodical in your bookkeeping if it's a business. And what we've been talking about all revolves around cash, and cash is king. And if you're in a business, you have to make sure you have enough cash. And this, all the back work and all the costs involved come to a gross profit of a profitability, which will increase the cash. And this is critical, knowing what your costs are going to be. Continue, James. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
very good. Thank you, Andy. Now, since the startup is over now, so we go to the starting of the operations. Now, some of you, as I earlier said, you might be already in this stage now, and therefore you might have done many of these functions to be able to be ready. But for those of you who are just starting out, don't try to immediately set up an entity. It might not be necessary for you unless there is some liability issue which your lawyer is telling you, yes, you should probably start with an LLC here. Otherwise, just be a sole proprietor. So file the taxes as Schedule C tax filer, and that should be enough. Setting up an LLC or a S corporation entails much more of a back office work, like having a good CPA for you to file those taxes, keeping kind of a bookkeeper to make sure that the the flows are cash flows are recorded, expenses are recorded. Whereas if you set it up as a sole proprietor, some of this can be avoided, and some of the headache until your sole proprietorship reaches a place where your revenue is quite high now, 150,000, you're making about 40, $50,000 profit. At that time, it might be useful to set the corporation, but get some help. Don't just read or listen to somebody else. Andy?
This is really important. You want to pay taxes. You want to be profitable. You want to make a pension plan contribution. You want to keep this business running so that you can retire. I mean, this whole thing is really long-term thinking that your pension profit sharing plan has to grow in the years that you are operating. I mean, you can't do it at 65. You have to do it at 25 and have that 40-year growth of retirement funding. So the whole point of paying taxes is that you're profitable, and that allows you to do the pension situation. I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
No, that was very essential. And the last point here, Andy, because he's a CPA, whenever we mentor our clients, insist on making sure when you start, have a separate bank account. Don't have combine the personal with your business. Will be very, very difficult then to untangle the problems, or it will be more difficult for your CPA to be able to say, what is this, why is this a personal account. And similarly, a separate credit card, that would be beneficial in two ways. One is, again, you are not mixing your personal expenses with your credit card, but also make sure, Andy came up with this, one of our earlier clients. He said, you get about 24 to 25 days of free money by using credit card, because when you make sure that your billing cycle starts, says, on the third of each month. That means you have, for the next 28 days where you are not actually using those funds, which can be used for some other purposes. And when the bill comes, oh, don't just pay the minimum. We want you to pay the full. Yeah, because the interest rates on credit cards bills are very, very high, and you don't want to be in a deep trouble even before you start. Uh, Moving on, uh, as you start the business, there are few irritating key features of businesses. That is, if you are doing your business in Los Angeles, you must have a Los Angeles business license. And do you want to explain what the downfall is?
Well, in Los Angeles, the first 100,000 on your business of revenue on your reported business license is tax free. You only pay the $131 over the $100,000 exemption that they give. So usually no one has to pay an LA City business license if they're under 100,000. If you don't file the tax return, you lose the $100,000 exemption, and they come after you for the LA City business license. And if you're not in Los Angeles, check Santa Monica, check Burbank, check Glendale. I mean, all these cities do have some sort of a business license, and make sure you identify them and heed the words by filing the return, even if you don't owe any money.
Andy, you want to complete this?
Oh, sure, sure. So if you become a Schedule C filer, you don't need an EIN number. You only need an EIN number if you're an entity or you have employees. You can use your Social Security number all the time. It works. Seller's permit, if you're buying something and you're going to take that product and reform it into another product, you show your seller's permit and you don't pay sales tax for the product that you're purchasing, and you collect the sales tax when you're selling the product. So you have to get to Sacramento and get a seller's permit. DBA license, if your business is not, Andy's towing service, your business is Andy's towing service, you have to get a DBA license showing who owns Andy's towing service and name, address, phone number. We've been recommending, I don't know why we came to females, but we've been recommending that people with a DBA don't use their home address and use a PO box, because everything is so public these days that maybe it's safer to have a PO box instead of your personal residence. Think about it. And a fictitious business name is the same, and you have to file that you're doing business as. The next part that James is going to begin with is the cash needed to get started. So let's go over to that, because that's critical, very critical.
And in when you start the business, I think you'll find that you need some capital, some time, somewhere. It might not be if you are into manufacturing, or if you want to produce something yourself, you need to buy some machines. Especially we had clients who were starting out making uh, items at home. So then they needed a protruder which could push out the kind of mixes they were mixing. Or if you are going to open a restaurant, then you know immediately that's going to really be very, very high. Now, if you are a service provider, some of these initial capital might not be that high, because unless you are into a medical kind of a service where there might be some requirements for you to have some costly, expensive equipment. And therefore, otherwise, if suppose, for example, you are a management operations consultant, the kind of thing what you need is a very good laptop or a computer, access to quite a lot of sources and websites for collecting information, and be able to do it from home. Unless then again, if you're having some equipment, that means you must need a space. And those are the reasons why we talk about capital. Now, the next slide is basically sources of financing. If you're fortunate and you have own savings, well and good. Um, but make sure that when you put out your savings, that if it is coming, let it not come from any of your retirement plans. That's not wise unless you're very sure of your business. The savings are where you have set aside money for travel, or if you have set it up, for example, in terms of owning a boat, a luxury item, those kind of savings are fine. Otherwise, loans are an option, and you can go to banks, financial institutions. There is an SBA guaranteed loan, which is a soft loan, meaning lower interest rate. But for loans, the caveat is you need to have at least 3 years of tax filings, and you must also have a business plan attached with that. For the reason, the business plan, if you are just trying to do a small operation, you don't take much loan, and you don't go to a bank or a financial institution, a business plan might not be important. But once you're going to a financial institution and bank, and even SBA, they will ask you to have the 3 years tax filings and the business plan. Yes, Andy?
The banking situation, I believe in credit unions and I believe in small local business banks. I think they want your business, they want your accounts, they want your business, they need your help, and you need their help. Uh, think of, don't I mean Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they're just too big for startups. They're much too big for startups. And when you do open up a checking account, I forgot to mention this, when you do open up a checking account, you're just opening up a second personal account. You're not opening up a business account. In your mind, it's a business account, but the bank, it's just a personal account. Eventually, when business explodes and grows, you can change the bank account and do all that. But don't get caught up in opening up a business account at the bank. They'll keep you crazy. They'll make you crazy. The 3 year finance, the 3 year for loans for banks and for the SBA is really, that's the crux of this thing. It'll take you a year to 2 years to get rocking and rolling and the ball moving down the hill, and you're profitable. 3 years, you should be able to show anybody that it's working and here's my income and it looks good. So there's a reason for that 3 years. It's going to take you time to get this thing working. The last thing I want to bring up is personal loans from Uncle Harry and Aunt Dorothy. I mean, it is, you can borrow the money from them, but they want to know when their money is coming back. And that's why you need a business plan to show in year 4, I can return the money to you because year 3 was so profitable. Year 4, I can return the money to you. And that's the beauty of borrowing from family. They just want to know when they're getting their money out of the company. Anyway, there you go. That's my
Yeah,
take.
very good, Andy. The other possibilities are you can apply for grants. They are not, the grants tend to be very selective. They need a very good reports. They have got a lot of paperwork to be done. Crowdfunding is a possibility, and family and friends, as Andy said. One of the things you might also look at is if you are some kind of a establishment which has some certification of being a minority owner. There are some benefits to that because there are some institutions just focus on those, or even the LS city or the state. They have some programs for offering services for the minority, and therefore you may want to look at that. The business plan, I'm not sure some of you have seen it. It's quite an exhaustive, about 7, 8 steps. But what you need is the 3 most important sections are: is there a financial forecasting? There has to be a 5 year expected revenue stream, expenses, and net profit or net losses. The second one is a marketing plan which provides that revenue, because the marketing plan will show how many customers will I get in the first year, how many customers will I get in the second year, and so on. And each customer, will they buy one item once a year, or one item every month? Therefore, it can multiply the price times the units sold to be able to get that revenue for the financial plan. So they are very closely tied, the marketing plan and the financial plan. So those are 2 key ones. And the third one is, what is your goal in establishing the, simply in terms of, for the people who are giving you money, to know what are you doing with this business? Where is it going? Is this what you want to do for life? Is this going to be something of your own? That kind of a goal. So the 3 things are financial forecasting, a marketing plan, and a goal. This should be the basic part of that business plan. Going to the next. Yeah.
Let me add to that 1 second. Keep your day job. You still need revenue to pay your monthly expenses, but you also need to know what your monthly expenses are. How many products, how many interviews, how many consulting jobs do I have to do a month to keep my lifestyle the way it is? So if your personal expenses are $5,000 a month and you're charging $250 an hour for consulting, you need 20 consultants for that month to break even if you collect the $5,000. I mean, it becomes what your need is first, what your personal expenses are that you need to cover, because now you're on your own at this point. I'm sorry, go
Yeah,
back.
very good. Yeah, the yeah, and people really don't realize when they switch from working to being a business owner, there are three costs hit you directly. Two of them very, very big. One is there is no medical insurance, so you have to cover for that. The second one is there is no retirement plan, and therefore, Andy, for our clients, will always insist the moment they start making profits to set aside a retirement plan that will reduce your taxes on one end, and as you grow, the business grows, you'll accumulate a decent nest egg for a retirement. The last one is there are no vacations, so you can't take a vacation and paid by the company. When you take a vacation, unless somebody is taking over that, it will suffer. The business will suffer. Moving on, we have now looked at the who's our target market, who's our customers, who's our competitors. Now we want to have this idea what we had into a product or a service. In a product situation, you are making T-shirts with any logo you want, and you're selling to groups or for small organizations. And therefore, what you need to do then is you are buying the blank T-shirts in various colors, and you have to decide when you start, do I want to have all the six sizes be sold? Uh, Andy, coming from the garment industry, as really a good suggestion, that is, when you start, don't go with small, medium, large, extra, extra large. Go with three, the most moderate, what they call the middle of the large group, uh, that is uh, medium, uh, large, and extra large. Those should be the way you start so that you don't have inventory. Andy will later on explain some of the downfalls having producing everything. And don't make too many colors, and because that will also create a problem when people don't like their colors. Start with basic colors which people like, and therefore you can do that. And if you're providing a service, for example, we had a client who was offering wellness service, and her expertise was in trying to help battered women. So our target market is very, very clear who they were. So the only question for her was finding out how and where she can get in touch with them. When you're providing a service, there are three essential criteria you should look at. One is you must have some kind of a certification or a degree in that area to be able to be legitimate and be able to really provide that service. Like counseling, for example, do you have a degree in counseling? The second one is there any licensing involved in this kind of services? And the third is number of years. The more number of years you have, the better will be your product to be a service for the client, and they will benefit from that, and therefore you should be able to provide that service. Once you have come up with a product or service, it's very good to do a test. Immediately, a preliminary test is important, but you don't have the funds to do a test marketing. So what Andy and I have always been suggesting is give it to your friends or family members, about 5, 10 of them, without any charge. Tell them, try it out, see what it is. Or if you're providing a service, you be my client, I'll give you that service. But at the end of that service or a product would have given them, ask what did they think of the service? What was the product like? Something which you did not like? What were the, if I had to put a price range on that, ask them what amount would you be willing to pay for this service or product? So that will give you a good idea for the next step, which is not the next step, the following one. Once you have done that product and service test, now come up with a calculation. And you want to pitch in here in terms
Yeah,
of
the knowing what you can your costs are to make the your product from your suppliers, and knowing how much cheaper the supplier will charge you if the quantities are larger. You're talking about a whole situation of space in your home or your garage or wherever you're renting from. You need to communicate with the supplier that you're using, or the three suppliers that you're using, what your situation is. This is kind of tough. You don't want $1 billion worth of inventory. Inventory, it takes all your cash and sits it on a shelf, and the dead inventory doesn't grow. It gets cheaper and less value every day. So you want to keep your inventory small enough that you can turn it. And was James was explaining about blank T-shirts and printing on them. That's a perfect situation for inventory. You get an order for 100 pieces, you go out and buy 106 blank T-shirts, you print them, they're gone, and you had 6 pieces left over for samples or whatnot. It just that's the easy way to operate. There's another easy way to operate, and we didn't cover this, but maybe you could work for one of your competitors for a month, 2, 3, 6 months, work inside, learn the entire operation, keep notes, figure everything out, and then unfortunately you have to move and you're leaving, and boom, you're in business because you've learned everything in that 6-month period. People do this. This is a product of life. I mean, this is how sometimes it works. But I just threw that out just to add to the competitiveness of the business situation.
very good point, Andy. Very good. Uh, Now comes the question of you have to set a price. The guidelines Andy have used is very simple. On one hand, look at your competitor and see whether you want to be in the middle,
Ah,
or you want to be lower, or you want to be a high end.
right.
If you're making it to a high end, you're very selective. You're not selling too many units then, but the profit margin is good. But you're competing with some big guns there, and therefore it will be very, very difficult. Maintaining it equal creates a situation strategically. You're removing one competitive advantage somebody might have because they cannot compete on the level of the price at that point. So you have some small benefit out of that. The other one which you should look at is your cost. There's no way you should be selling something below your total cost. It has to be above your total cost. So those are two guidelines. And as we said, when you do the test marketing, you might get an indication of what the people think, what it is worth. Price is quite often equated what is called value. If something is costing $10,000, the person who's buying it thinks that is valuable, even though the materials and everything, like eyeglasses, a very good example. Branded eyeglasses, the frame is the one which is expensive. That is not the one which is correcting your eyes, but that's just a fashion. So you're paying $250. The lenses take only about $5 to $6 to make, but the remaining price is coming from the brand, and therefore the markup decided on that brand. So this is where you set the price range. The guidelines are see what the test market says, make sure that it's above the cost, and see where you want to place in the competitor's range. Next.
You can be selling one Rolls Royce a year or 1,000 T-shirts a month. I mean, quantity selling at a high volume quantity is a lot easier than I think waiting for that one sale in Wyoming of a Rolls Royce. I just think works better for the lower end market. And you don't want to be in the middle. Somehow in the middle, you get lost with everybody else dealing with your product. Being a little below that or a little above that is better than being in the middle with everybody else.
Yeah, very good point, Andy. The next one we will be wanting to look, as you business is now starting, you might want to look in terms of need some professionals. He's definitely need a CPA. You might need a bookkeeper. Just keeping the record of your expenses, income, and all is very important. Probably an attorney. Uh, Try to establish a relationship with a banker. It might not be that important when you're starting, but as you're growing, that relationship will be very, very beneficial with that banker. So these are some of the things which you may want to do. And the other question which Andy always asks is, are you in this business for short term or long term? If that original question of whether it's a hobby or is a business dovetails into this situation where you are now saying, if it is going to be short term, you have to recognize what are my options, what should I do with this in the future so that I don't carry the burden of this. Probably your relatives or children want to get involved, or they do not want to get involved. Therefore, what should I do? And the next question is, should I have if you're having a retail store, can it be selling from home, or do you have to have an actual office or a storefront for you to have this business going? Because that will cost you uh, 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 your rent. Sometimes you might invest in that particular place, and therefore you want to avoid paying that kind of a cost because that will directly affect your price, therefore affect your profits, and therefore it will be whether sustainable or not. The next slide we are looking at is, can you conduct, this is what I've said, can you conduct business from business or not? Definitely you have to look into the liability issues. And Andy, you want to step in?
Yeah. If there's um, if you feel that there's a liability issue in the product or the consulting service or whatever service you're providing, you might want to consider becoming some sort of a legal entity and provide yourself, if you've got assets, with liability insurance, which an umbrella liability policy, which will cover you, God forbid, this litigious society we live in, you get sued for something. So a corporation will help you. You don't, if there's a liability problem, you need to have a discussion with your attorney who's on staff with you guys. Okay. Let me go on to the bookkeeping side.
Yeah.
QuickBooks is the savior. It works. It's fantastic. You have to become familiar with it. I don't want you new businesses delving into QuickBooks. You can get lost in there for days. Have a bookkeeper train you, have someone outside come in once a month. You pay her $100 a month. He or she will explain everything to you. And you need to know your monthly financial statements. You need to know what's going on every month. And this service will provide it for you. It works. It's good.
Okay, next one. Now you start your marketing campaign. This is the one where you're taking your product out into the people and asking them, they please buy this. What are the things you are to look at over here? The When you go to the marketing part of it, the campaign part of it, there are two ends. One is the communication part. The other one is the availability part. The availability part is the actual, is it sold in a store? Is it distributed by websites? Is it distributed by e-commerce marketers? People like Amazon or Etsy, eBay, those kind of companies? Or is it being sold from you directly to the client? From the communication point of view, the idea is to present to the client, your target group always, what exactly is the value for them in buying this? What is the benefit they are getting out of buying this? And why is it so different than what is available in the marketplace? And therefore, your messaging has to come through. And the next comes the media. What vehicle are you using to, to present this product? The oldest form is talking to people, but when you've got a large volume, then that is not practical. Therefore, having a website that might be helpful, or trying to have the e-commerce people sell your product, but that is there's some cost attached to that. and therefore you might be reducing your profit margin by offering them and taking some of the burden off you. And the media wise nowadays, the very big hit is the social media. There are young people media, people in the 50s and the 60s media. Social media basically implies things like Facebook is one good example. It could be also in terms of Instagram is a second example. LinkedIn is a third example. So you can use those to be able to present your product. Keep in mind, social media hits a lot of people, and therefore, by the time they see your ad, the trickle down, there's a funnel in the marketing strategy, which is you need to hit a lot of people, large number of people to end up getting 10, 15 sales, because the percentage of the upper part of the funnel is big. 100,000 people come and visit you. About 2,000 might be interested in you, go further to look at what it is. And about 100 might come and down to say, what am I buying over here? And only about 4 or 5 from that big startup who might end up buying. And therefore, you have to be very careful in selecting what kind of a media you want to use. So at this point, what I want to do is this is what we have done in terms of strategy. After you have started the business, what we went through is the strategy of our target market, strategy of our product, what are the benefits of that particular product, strategy of our pricing, strategy of our campaign, and strategy of our distribution. Those are the combined strategies which you have to manage in any operation. And you want to
Yeah,
add?
yeah, I agree with everything you said. It was a great conversation. I want to bring up 2 points. Shopify, it works. It's fantastic. Merchant fees are carried through credit card. I mean, it just covers the entire bookkeeping operation. You need to get the money back in your bank account for your products. And the second thing is Etsy. Uh, Put your product, whatever it is, on Etsy. See if you can sell it on Etsy. See what your competitors are doing on Etsy. It's You have to sell, sell, sell. I don't care. Everything, the production will take care of itself if it's quality and it's good, but you have to sell the product. And you sell yourself as a service business, or you sell yourself as a manufacturer of some sort, whatever mousetraps you're making these days. Anyway, this was great. Anything else, James? I thought this was
No, no,
fabulous.
these are very wide.
Good.
Thank you for giving this opportunity for us to present to you something. Hope it has been of some value somewhere. And Danielle,
Questions?
yeah,
All right. Thank you so much. Between the two of you, you have so much experience, so this is really a treat to hear from you, and it was great. We do have questions, and we do have some time, so I'm going to go ahead and start. And as I ask the questions, I'll kind of they're going to flash across the screen so we can all see the question as well. The first one: at what point would you say a hobby can become a business? You mentioned that, as far as
Okay.
businesses.
Okay.
very good
If
question, though, right,
Really
Andy?
good question. Right. If you can foresee this product or whatever going forward in the market that you're covering, if you see that you can continue doing this and becoming larger and larger, that is the turning point that you become a business. Um, and you, again, I want you to pay taxes because you're profitable. So then you have to start keeping strict record keeping. A starting point when the business begins, June 30th, December 31st, and record keeping begins, and all the data and backward information you did prior to that is helped you become a business. James?
Yeah, no, yeah, very, very good answer, Andy. Yeah,
Great. Few other questions.
yeah.
Next one. What should my very first step for my what should be my very first step for startup? And I think you've obviously have given us all the steps, and the first thing is coming up with an idea and the preliminary assessment. But if someone is just overwhelmed, what would you recommend is their first step, as far as, is there someone they can
Yeah.
talk to, or what? And I have some ideas too, but I want to hear from you too.
Sure. Andy and I, what we have found is quite often people, they are instinctively, they want to be their own bosses. So the driving force quite often is they don't want to be tied up in an office waiting for salaries to come. It is very good that every month we get a salary, but that is I want to take some chances, and I don't want to be for the next 30 years doing this. It is boring. It is driving. I want to be my own boss. At that point, you have to start saying, uh, what do I want to be the business in? You have to crystallize that very, very well. Just don't figure out and say, I want to start a coffee shop. Unfortunately, that is not the way to start a business. In fact, Andy and I had a client. When he came to us, he had already rented a restaurant space even before knowing whether location is good, there are other restaurants over there, and what kind of this one. He didn't have an idea what cuisine is going to offer. At least one or two of them came to us by the specific cuisine they want to try. It is not available in the neighborhood. So must have an idea what you want. It would come from your exposure at your work. And in fact, one of our consulting service client was, she was doing administration, she was doing management operations, and she said, we are hiring others to do the improvements on that. I can do that. So she just went out, started on her own with her idea, and she used the people whom she had called out before to start the marketplace, the initial one or two clients, and she has done quite well with that. Or you have a product in mind which you have tinkered on for some time, and therefore you want to improve on that, or you are a mechanically minded person, so you see something which is uh, I'm not sure this is a very good example. One of our clients had a flushing operation for the toilet, which he thought was much superior to the others, simply because it will has a faster, better, quicker flow with few little bit of less water. Uh, he thought that would be. We didn't pursue with it for after some time, so we don't know where he ended. Andy, you want to add to this?
No, I think the passion. You have to have the passion.
Very
Before COVID, we would meet at coffee shops and we would meet with a third person, and you could see the passion in their voice of what they wanted to do. Here, it's a little different being on a Zoom, but you have to have that passion, that inert, that you're going to go forward and do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Attitude.
and also, Andy, you're taking a risk. You have to recognize that.
Right, right.
Okay. Um, Other question: what are the biggest mistakes that startups make?
Not enough cash, not enough money, not enough cash. There's something else I wanted. We talked about cash before, about Uncle Harry lending money. If you put in more money than you're asking Uncle Harry for, Uncle Harry would probably lend the money because he sees you're in for 30,000 and all you're borrowing is 10,000. But if you're putting in 500 and you're asking Uncle Harry for 10,000, he's going to have some questions. Why can't you put in the rest? It's all a matter of cash. I'll say it 1,000 times. It's cash flow, making cash work. You have to have the cash.
And,
And James thought of a brilliant idea. I totally forgot about it. Use your credit card for cash. If you have 20 days of free cash, take $1,000 out. If you need it to buy product, use your credit card and pay it back. Years and years and years. I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but we were a startup company and we were growing, and I would stand out on the street waiting for the mailman because the checks came in the mail to whether I could run to the bank and make the deposit so we could cover the payroll. I mean, it's all a matter of cash, just
yeah.
cash, cash, cash.
Yeah, the Andy also wanted to say, You remember we are told you to do assessment, very important.
Right.
As soon as you get an idea, don't just start.
Right.
Take a little bit of time, a day,
Patience.
a week, a
Patience.
month or so, and say how many people are interested in this. How can I make this? And who will buy this? How many should I sell in order to for me to be able to make some profits out of that? So sit back and do that assessment very, very well before you put any money or time even. And that's why nowadays Andy and I meet a group of small businesses called entrepreneurs. These are the people who are working full time, 40, 50 hours, and the remaining 20 hours or 25 hours a week, they have started their business so that they have always a cushion at the back, and therefore they have the time to be able to explore this. If it fails, they can either stop that and go into something else. So take time, make an assessment before you go in deeply into it.
And I'm just going to throw in here too, as you went back and discussed the assessment and taking time with it. I have to throw in the library as a resource here in the business and economics department. We actually, between the databases that we subscribe to that folks can access for free with their library card, as well as a lot of print material that we have on site at Central Library, almost all of these points that you went down through, we have a book or a database or reports of some type that will help folks. So doing your target market, your demographic research, your market share research, looking into different industries, all the way to doing your business plan, marketing campaigns, even the specific types of platforms you talked about, Shopify, Etsy, Instagram. We have resources on all of that. So 100%, that's fantastic that you said take your time with that assessment and really understand what you're getting into. And the library is one resource for folks. And I want to point out if you can see, my email address is here. I've made it available to our audience. If you need to follow up with me to get either the PowerPoint you saw today or any questions at all about resources available, feel free to follow up with me. We have just a little bit more time. And so I have a question that is for me to you. Could you just explain SCORE and your work with SCORE as volunteer mentors, just real briefly so our audience can understand?
Okay, so I started SCORE about 6 years ago. A friend told me I had to try this, and they were looking for accountants or CPAs with helping people get organized and started. I went through about a 4 or 5 week national program of how to react to clients, how to listen to clients, how to hear what they're saying. And then you take a very basic exam, and then you became a provincial mentor, and you worked with a seasoned mentor for about 2 or 3 months, and you've got a feel for how it worked. And then I went out on my own, I became a mentor. Then I mentored James for about 4 or 5 months, and then we felt so comfortable together that we decided to work together. And we asked our LA office whether we could do it as a team instead of an individual. I don't think it's foreboding that it's a one client versus two situation. Anyway, so a client has a question. He wants to know how to start a business. He goes to SCORE LA. He fills out a form, what he needs to do. And there are people who will take that information and decide of the 80 or so members of our chapter who can answer that question that the client has. They're assigned to that person, and the process begins.
Great. Fantastic.
It's simple. It works. It's very simple, and it works.
And it's free. And,
It's
even
free.
though this is a lot of work to have a startup, you don't have to do it alone is what it sounds like. So we are just at time. So we're going to go ahead and end. Andy and James, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in, and have a good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon too.
Bye.
Bye. It was a great opportunity for us.
Great, great.
Yeah.